안녕하십니까?
Good morning, everyone. I am moderator. I am Professor Lee Jae-woo at Konkuk University. As you are well aware, UAM getting a lot of attention from general, and today we'd like to talk about how the UAM will be expanded to the future. So, as one of the members in the aerospace industry, I am very proud and happy to have this session. We have broadcasting on YouTube. You can join us online. As you are well aware, the Korean government is launching its roadmap to develop the UAM. And the core technologies of UAM will have many, such as infrastructure, operation, and it also need to be combined with the AI and the remote flight operation services to develop the core technologies and to build the operation services successfully. Then the private, public, and the academic circle should divide its role and cooperate in some areas, and it should be supported by the strong political will. So first, during the session, the first speaker will be the UAM cornerstone of Konkuk University and Korean Air's joint project. Let me just be brief on this project. And Konkuk University and Korean Air jointly set out the UAM mobility operation concept. As you are well aware, UAM is not only delivering people but also objects. It is an advanced system to deliver people and object. It is called as drone and air taxi and many other names. And it has become one important part of the new mobility. And aircraft regulation, infrastructure, and two other factors are the key components of this UAM. And together with the aircraft, environment that have an impact on the aircraft and some other environment like noise and some the other environmental factors that can have an impact on the living environment of the people should be considered, and also the requirements for the pilot should be prepared as well. And its traffic control is a little bit different from the existing traffic control. So we also have to consider ports and many other infrastructure need to be prepared to complete the flight operation services. Around the world, the UAM CONOPS have been studied, and we can find a lot of literatures about the UAM CONOPS, and FAA, the US authority, established the concept of the UAM CONCOP already, and the UAMP has been established to release their white paper as well. And Asiana also set out their operation, the services in 4 different stages. And to have the urban mobility services in Korea, we need to set out our standards as soon as possible. So KUAM CONOPS will be released and opened during this event. Against this backdrop, Konkuk University and Korean Air join our hands to study how we should build the CONOPS. So it will deal with how we operate the flights in real, and operation system, and the stakeholders, and the scenarios will be developed under this joint project. The images on the left is the project version 1.0. And the government, if government officially announce this version 1.0, then we will revise it to the version 2.0. It largely has the operation procedures and 5 different operation systems, and it will define the many detailed requirements. One important thing is that when it comes to the operation, there are many different stakeholders. We have to introduce, so this book introduced the stakeholders, and we also suggest some operation architecture to make that happen. And the passenger platform and the transport platform are having different roles to carry, And the operation scenarios for the normal situation and abnormal situation were included as well. And today, the time is very limited, so I just give you the overview only. And from July 7th and 8th, we will have the academic seminar. So there will be the UAM special session, and we're going to provide enough time for you to present and have a discussion. I encourage you to take part in that. And please go to this link to have this presentation. I actually prepare some hard copies, so that I just put the hard copies in the back. So if you like, please have one copy. I'd like to wrap up my presentation, and now we'd like to begin the thematic session in Rio. And during the session, we have manager from Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport, and Hyundai and Lilium and Hana Systems. They will present, and after the presentation, we will have a discussion to find out the solution to the future UAM mobility. The first speaker is Na Jin-hang, Director of Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport. He studied at the Seoul National University Engineering, and currently he is responsible for Drone Transport Division at the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport. Please welcome him with a big hand.
네, 여러분 안녕하세요. 국토교통부 미래드론 교통 담당관
My name is
나진항입니다.
Na Jin-hang, Director of Drone Transport Division from the Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport. Thank you for inviting me to this meaningful event. Without further ado, I will start my presentation.
차원에서 UAM을 도대체 어떻게 보고 있는가?
The Republic of Korea is dealing with the UAM with a certain policy and goals and activity plan. So I will explain about this. In terms of mobility, what the
사실은 이 교통수단이라는 것은 도시하고 뗄래야 뗄 수가 없습니다. 사람이 살아가면서 뭐 사는 곳, 일하는 곳, 그리고 노는 곳, 즐기는 곳이 붙으면 모빌리티라는 게 사실 필요가 없겠죠. 이동이라는 게 필요가 없습니다.
Everything can be happen in the proximity, then there will be no problem with transportation. But that's not true. So we have to think about mobility issues. In the past, the mobility is about mainly walking. In the urban area, mobility, demand, and their limitations are becoming a problem. And we have been solving these problems. And in the past, in history, we used the carts led by horse, and then we used the motors. And more recently, we have used vehicles. And with the introduction of vehicles, we were able to expand the scope of our activity and mobility. And likewise, in recent times, with the development of urban area, we are thinking about the problems with the transport system focusing on vehicles, because it can create some environmental problems and many other issues. So a lot of innovative technologies are being developed. The prime example is the software development regarding mobility. So one example is the automotive driving. And then we were exploring the other transportation modes like subway. And for the improved convenience, we were thinking about personal mobility. So likewise, we are expanding the scope of mobility. So one of the such new technology is UAM. Transportation and urban area are not closely related in terms of UAM, because when we used to take a flight, we have to go out of the urban area to the airport. But in the proximity to where we live and be active in urban area, we started to think about new methods of transport. How can we become more flexible and more convenient in terms of mobility? So here is UAM. which
그렇기 때문에
can
이런
be
변화가 발생하는
vertically
건데
take off and
이 모빌리티
land.
차원에서 이게 도대체 어떤 의미가 있는가
landing.
그리고 어떤 문제를 제기하고 있는 걸 한번 봐야 될 것 같습니다.
So we need to think
아까도
about the
말씀드렸지만
current status,
이
including
공항이라는
the
것은
problems
소음도
of
많고요, 활주로도
UAM.
필요하기 때문에
The airport is
요즘에는
noisy
도시의
and
외곽에
it
위치해
requires
있습니다.
runway.
그래서
So
모빌리티로서의
airport
역할을
usually
제대로 못했죠.
located
굉장히 빠른
far away
교통수단이다라는
from
장점이
the
있었음에도
urban
불구하고
areas.
모빌리티로서의 한계가 있었습니다.
So there are some
그렇지만 이
limitations
EV
in
툴이라는
providing
새로운 수직
mobility service to
전기 동력의
people.
수직 이착륙 비행장치는
But with the introduction of
중심으로 가져왔죠.
eVTOL,
그렇기 때문에
we
모빌리티의
were
혁신이
able
가능했다고 할 수
to
있습니다.
use a
그렇지만
new
그것이
mobility
끝이냐?
service.
그렇지가 않습니다.
That's
이게
not the
그냥
end.
팬시한 아주 멋진 그냥
The
비행체
UAM
또는
sounds very
내가
good.
가지고 있는 멋진 어떤 기계장치
It's a very nice,
그
amazing
기체만 개발했으면 끝났을 겁니다.
aircraft.
그렇지만 그게 아니고 우리는 이걸
We
교통수단으로
have
보고
to go
있다는 거죠.
further developing this
뭐가
UAM
필요할까요?
itself. We need to
결국에는
be able
이
to
교통수단이
use it
체계적으로
as a
움직일 수 있는
transportation
시스템이
mode.
필요합니다. 아까
And that requires the new introduction of transportation system. So with the ConOps, the stakeholders should work together in a cooperative manner with a clear role divided. And that is the necessary work to make UAM as a new mobility.
마지막으로 이 모빌리티가
Lastly,
이 항공교통의 모빌리티로서 작동을 하려면 다른 모빌리티들과의
in order to use UAM as a mobility method, we need to make it connect to other modes of transport.
너무 비싸면
If the UAM is too expensive, people may not use it,
너무 연계가 잘 안 된다.
or the UAM is not connected to the other methods of transportation, people may not use it. So,
어떤 경쟁할 수 있는 적절한 가격 수준도 있어야
in order
되고
to have UAM be a real mobility service, we need to think about the cost and the connectivity to other transportation modes.
아까 말씀드렸던
So
어떤 비용적인
UAM is something about that people ride. So cost and as well as safety comes very important matter.
이걸 잘 받아들일 수 있는
And also, people need to accept this new transportation mode. So we need to be comprehensive when it comes to approaching this new transportation method. So that is the core ideas about our policy agenda. So with that, we have introduced K roadmap. And we have launched a K UAM team Korea. So the elements that I have introduced are essential. We have to all consider these elements in an integrated way. So to do that, we are working with academia, industry, and government agencies and local governments, as you can see here. A lot of members are partnering with us. Many organizations are working with us, and we are continuing discussions about the new mobility of UAM.
라고 하면은 저희의 그 KUAM의
This is the roadmap of KUAM.
25년까지 저희들이
The first phase is the preparation stage by 2025. So by the year 2025, we plan to commercialize the UAM. And in the third phase, by the year 2030, we plan to expand the routes for UAM. And with the development of UAM, in the fourth stage, we can make the uses of UAM popularized among people.
6가지 전략을 만들었는데요.
So with that in mind, we have come up with 6 strategies. The one important thing is to making regulation. Many people think regulation as a barrier. But without a clear goal, the stakeholders may work in a separate way. So each separate strategy may sound look, but in the end they may not go and work hand in hand. So that is why we come up with this
strategies. And under this strategy, we introduced KUAM Grand Challenge. And this is about the Korean type con-ops. So with this framework, we will implement our plan. The UAM requires a lot of organizations in our partnership. The infrastructure establishment will be made by different organizations, and operation framework require the partnership with different entities. So the collaboration is key, and we will continue demonstration and pilot project with these stakeholders. And at the government level, the R&D projects are being made and conducted with the companies. And also, we plan to use UAM as a government method because the public acceptance requires time. So the government is thinking about many different issues in many different dimensions to introduce UAM as a true mobile service. This is the KUAM roadmap, and it shows the demonstration route. And we have this initial stage route for UAM service. This is not the final version, and with this pilot program, we will expand our project further. And I think the UAM industrial ecosystem development is very important. The licensing and insurance schemes are very important, we believe. And the UAM in Korea may not be isolated from the international industry, so we will work with international companies as well. And we have achieved many things, but there is a long way to go. So we have come up with this UAM technology roadmap. So we consider the ecosystem for UAM, and we apply various technological elements to approach this ecosystem. Technological elements are important, but we always think about UAM as a method of transportation. So for the UAM as a method of transportation, we have calculated the cost effectiveness. And then we came up with a strategy for the technological development because we found that the UAM project can be profitable. It can fly at the speed of 300 kilometers, and we can increase the speed rate further as we go on. And the initial investment will require a huge amount of money. By 2030, we conclude that we can make this project a profitable one by the year 2030. And we come up with the 100 or more technologies that we are developing in this UAM area. To achieve the goals, we are planning to introduce KUAM Challenge. This UAM is actually flying, so we want to show this to the general public. That's why we have introduced this program with the partnership with 5 other government agencies. Also, we are establishing some legal framework with relevant government agencies. The KAM Team Korea members are working on this as well. Finally, the UAM
will become materialized, and in what way and when will that happen? That's a question. It will not change the entire transportation system, but it can complement the existing transportation system. Rather than seeing it as a game changer, we think it as a complementary system. So the current project is there, but it's not fixed. It is a living thing. So the plan can change as we go on. Let's say when UAM will fly at the speed of 300 kilometers, and that will bring a change that we cannot imagine now. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Please give him a big hand again for wonderful presentation.
And the Q&As will happen at the end of this session. And the second speaker is Jeungsan-no, Vice President of UAM Division of Hyundai Motor Company. He is now responsible for UAM Research and Development of Hyundai Motors. So please welcome him with a big hand. Hello everyone, I am Song Jae-young of Hyundai Motor Group. Great to see you all. Today, what I'd like to talk about is Hyundai's UAM and how we see the UAM and our direction for the UAM future. I want to simplify UAM in short word, that is some air taxi that is operating in the air for the public. That's my definition of UAM. Then why this kind of concept just appear in this moment of the era, I will give you the explanation later on. So there are four major trends. The first is electrification. Well, electrification is the main theme and becoming the mega trend for all vehicles. So even though it is a short distance, we will apply very simplified and more efficient aircraft throughout electrification. So many different types of configurations of aircraft is coming up. And the second is autonomy. If we are achieving driverless driving and flight, then we can lower the cost in a big way. So from that perspective, so it can be an industry for mass public. And because it is operating in this three-dimensional space, the data is different from the existing industry. Processing the data, collecting the data will be different, and how to collect them. And we also, at the same time, have to have innovative service models. And customers want to have a seamless connection, so we have to have ride sharing given that. So that's why the UAM is getting a lot of attention these days. And it can have in largely three applications. The first is a passenger transport, as you can guess. Electrification-based passenger will take 4 to 5 passengers. It will serve as like a taxi. Some major international airports like Incheon will have this aircraft to deliver 4 to 5 passengers to the city center. That will be the start of the service. And actually, we have a lot of opportunities in the logistics. And more emergent logistics or some goods that requires to be fresh, then they can use this services. And there are some areas are located remotely, like in islands or the forest. The cost to build a road or port will be much higher than build a port or some other UAM infrastructure. So there is another possibilities we can enjoy. And when it comes to the public use, the long distance delivery or the medical services or medical delivery, we can have another chance and markets there. All in all, if you think about the meaning and the purpose of the UAM, we will have the mega cities more like Seoul, and they have to have infrastructure to make efficient transport. So we need to have new means of mobility. Instead of depending on the road infrastructure, we are making most of the three-dimensional space. If that happens, then it will be time efficient and the environmentally friendly to the users. And it also enhances the quality of life and generate new types of lifestyle because they can save a lot of time. So from the perspective, UAM will be the most important part of new future. Helicopter is in operation, but why helicopter is not working for the purpose? As you are well aware, first of all, it's too noisy. If you are close to the helicopter, you cannot do anything. And it's highly restricted. You have to operate the helicopter only limited spaces and limited time. So it's expensive. And the major cities around the world commercialize the helicopter operation, but the scale is very limited. But the UAM can be open to the public, then we can have economies of scale. And then we can make the market and opportunities in real. There are many different perspectives on the UAM markets, and this is the UAM market forecast. By 2040, this industry will be the worth of $1,500 billion. I think it is most optimistic outlook. But the number, instead of the importance of the number, but what we have to focus on is that this market is very attractive and very big. And it's not about new service and product. It is all about a new industry generation. And no matter how much you can discount $1,500 billion, it is still big, and it generates new jobs and new industry. And that is the common perspective from many different agencies. Because it is so attractive, so many projects are now developed. As you're well aware, as I understand, there are 300 or more different configurations of aircraft. Competition is really fierce, but startups are leading this market. And so startup plays a key role in this industry. We have many guests from USA and Europe as well, and they try their best to speed up whole the process from the research and development to the commercialization. And the UAE as one means of mobility is important, so Hyundai is advancing into the UAM as well. Not only Hyundai, but also Toyota has made investment in UAM, and one Chinese automobile company and the German automobile company have made their investment and advance into this industry already. It is attractive, that's clear, but it's also challenging and ambitious. We have to seize some challenges. First is a safety issue. You have experienced the airline. It's 0.2 fatal accident rate of existing airline. That means every day, if you take the airplane every day, then accident can happen to every 2,000 people. So the existing in the airline industry is really and conservatively safe based on their accumulated know-how and experience for quite a long time. And automobiles' fatality rate is pretty high. Once the aircraft has some failure, it covered headlines, but the automobile accident didn't. So many people do not understand the safety level differences between the two mediums. So that means if we have one fatality accident in UAM or airline, it can be critical to the whole industry. So we have to set out the criteria of the safety and to develop the most safe the aircraft. The second challenge is noise. Helicopter. I said the disadvantages of a helicopter. The decibel-wise, truck and helgi is really loud and noisy. The background noise in the urban environment is about 15 to 20 decibel. The lowering 10 decibel is very difficult because it has to come down to at the log scale. So how to minimize the noise is really challenging point that we have to focus on. And the third challenge is the complexity of the operation. Existing airline industry operation is all about operating limited number airline in defined space. But if you think about air taxi, you have to provide the services, tens of thousands of services every day. It's unprecedented services. How are we going to control and give them the authority to fly? How are we going to do that? It is really difficult. So that is another important challenge we have to tackle. What I want to say is that UAM industry is not only about manufacturing and designing aircraft. That's one part of, that's just the tip of the iceberg. We have to have a cluster between academic circles and the business, and we also have infrastructure in the city center, and we also have air control management system. More than anything else, as it exposed and explained to the general public, UAM should be accepted by the general public, and they have to understand UAM can be their daily life. So it cannot be done by one single company, but many stakeholders should work together throughout the partnership to raise the awareness of UAM among the general public. So UAM will bring huge changes to the society. This is the image to show that changes. First change will be to the infrastructure. So the multi-port will appear. As you can see in the scene, the urban will look different. The retails and many different living and cultural facilities will be created totally different way. So the urban master plan will be changed in a big way. And the existing transport network should be linked to the UAM and UAM-related infrastructure. So the port or transport hub will be created, and living residential area or commercial area can be intertwined together. So the city center should be redesigned. That means the city planning, we are just providing new chance to the urban planning as well. We are looking for many global companies to partner with. These are the main cities to commercialize the UAM. And we try to have our advocacy groups in these cities and to cooperate with the stakeholders to open the industry and open the market there. Maybe around end of this year, there is a small city in Britain. Urban Airport is our partner for the multi-port. We will have a demonstration there. So very small airport in the city center is the concept of that demonstration. And in Singapore, they are very important partner in Asian market. Last year, we established the Innovation Center in Singapore, and we work together to develop some technologies there. Seoul as a city is really important partner to my company. So we try to find more opportunities to explore further. Last but not least, Hyundai Motor Group is having this type of future vision. Ultimately, we want to be integrated mobility service provider. We have mobilities on the ground, and we want to expand it to the air. And then these two will be integrated, and that will be provided as an integrated mobility services. And it will be focused on customers. For the convenience of the customers, we provide most safest and most efficient and most reliable services. And by doing so, we are naturally link the ground services to the air. We are standing at the infant stage, and we have a long-term perspective and long-term plan. And that's why we try to build a strong partnership with the partner companies and stakeholders, and we sincerely ask for your cooperation. That's it. Thank you very much.
The third presenter is Mr. Kim Seok-kyun, the Vice President of UAM Division of Hanwha Systems. He is very active, and I have met him many times. He served as a Rolls Royce before, and now a Vice President of Hanwha Systems. Please welcome Mr. Kim Seok-kyun with a big round of applause.
예, 안녕하십니까. 조금 전에 소개받은 한화 시스템의 UAM 사업을 맡고 있는
Good morning. My name is Kim Seok-kyun. I am the Vice President of UAM Division of Hanwha Systems.
엑스포가 지금 벌어진데 이런 뜻깊은
Now we are here in this Seoul Mobility Expo 2021. I am very honored to make a presentation in front of you. Given the short period of time, I want to make a brief presentations about the UAM concept that we have at Hanwha Systems. As the earlier speakers may have said, the UAM is growing very fast, and so I will talk about the UAM market, and I will talk about the safe and efficient fuselage of UAM. And then the UAM business should be worked on in partnership with government, so I will address that issue. And then we use the term ecosystem when we talk about UAM. So I will talk about the new ecosystem of UAM industry. Why do we need UAM? There are many different transportation systems. UAM will not replace all those systems. Rather, it will complement what is lacking among these existing transportation systems. Then how can we fill the gap that have not been addressed by the existing transportations? The second dimensional transportations have created many problems like congestions and the air pollution. We have only limited resources, and there are problems that we cannot expand the road size at our will. So there are many limitations with the existing transportation system. So we are thinking about the possibility of the third dimensional mobility as a solution to address the existing problems. There are many elements regarding these issues with the urbanization and the growth of population. We are seeing the problems with infrastructure as well as environment. So that is why we are thinking about eco-friendly cars that use electricity. And a lot of technologies are being used now to address these problems. UAM is expected to grow to take up 20% of the vehicle market. The conservative view is that the UAM will create the 730 trillion won in 2040. the year-on-year growth is more than 30% according to the estimation. So we are expecting exponential growth in of the UAM market. So that's what many market experts are saying. Hanwha Systems is considering the UAM in 3 areas: fuselage, infrastructure, and service. The eVTOL that we have called Butterfly has been developed with American partner. So in order to have the two-dimensional infrastructure, we have signed the MOU with a British company. By combining all these efforts, we are planning to provide service that you can use in the future. Not just the flight service, but also the maintenance and the training of the pilots are considered as a package of service at Hanwha. What is most important is the aircraft, the fuselage. The safest and the most efficient aircraft should be developed. In 2020, we have signed a strategic partnership with Airs. Globally, 300 startup companies are working in this field. We selected the startup companies that can make our vision possible. So Overair was chosen by us. It has developed Predator and another 14 aircrafts. Overair has developed the minimized aircrafts as well, so they are now in the final stage of producing it. The aircraft of Overair is the most efficient one compared to competitors. The cruise type and APM and the efficiency-wise, it shows good performance, and it also secured high level of safety. The front and rear wings are attached, so even one failure of the wings, it can manage the flight with safety. And it also has a patented technology in terms of noise level. So there are many worries about noise. So the Overair is developing a technology to reduce noise level. Infrastructure is very essential. Aircraft is one important element, but infrastructure is established to operate these aircrafts, and government is taking the leadership in establishing the infrastructure. The existing aircrafts are being operated, so hundreds of aircrafts are operated in the air. So, however, the UAM will see thousands of aircrafts in the air when it has been materialized in the future. So a lot of technological framework is necessary, like digital communication network, and all aircraft information should be shared by the control tower for safety. So the overall system network building is very important. Hanwha System has experience in the defense industry for more than 40 years. To build the UAM system, we have developed UATM by capitalizing our radar and communication and low-orbit satellite antenna technologies. So to that end, we have merged the technology companies, and we are working closely with other companies as well in the fields. As you may have heard about this, there is a NEST, the largest vertiport hub will be made. We have signed an MOU with Korean Airport Corporation, so we will make this possible by operating working level groups in partnership with Korea Airport Corporation. So we are planning this vertiport hub that can be used by as many people as possible. Aircraft infrastructure and operations service are the elements that are considered by us, and also the connection with the ground transport transit and the vertiport should be established. So in order to have all these materialize, we think the integrated mobility service ecosystem should be established. So if all these are materialized, it can complement the existing ground and sea air transportation. Hanwha System is working very hard to become the #1 transportation service provider. As you have seen during my presentation, we are working very hard to make this possible. In 2023, the butterfly will be launched, and you will be able to see the actual butterfly flying in the sky. Thank you very much.
This is the last speaker of this session, and Mr. Vice President of Lilium, Tashilu Wano, will deliver the last speech of the first session.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Tashino Wenner with a big hands.
Good morning, everybody. It is always very energizing to come to Korea, I must say. It is impressive to see and witness Korea's leadership in technology and innovation, and not only that, but also in the application of new technology and innovation. Today and this week, it is even more energizing to come to Korea, I must say, because for the past 15 months, roughly, I've been mostly working remotely. I've attended conferences, I've been on panels, I've given keynotes, but only remotely via video link. This is actually the first time that I'm back at a physical conference, and I enjoyed it a lot. And against that background, I would like to start off by not only thanking the hosts of the conference for having us today, but also by complimenting the Korean government, the authorities, the organizers of the conference for the handling of the COVID situation and for making possible a physical conference, which is really very inspiring to witness and to be part of. Thank you very much. With that, I'd also like to express that I'm very impressed by the sophisticated flow of this conference and this morning particularly so far, and also by all the other speakers that have presented already. We have heard about the opportunity that UAM and eVTOL will be bringing. We have heard about why this is happening now technologically, why it is possible. It would not have been possible 10 years ago. We've heard about concepts. We've seen renderings of aircraft. We've heard about CONOPS of Korean Air, and obviously also about the public framework that the Korean government is in the process of establishing with Team Korea, with the UAM Grand Challenge under the leadership of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. Against this background, I would be pleased to familiarize you with and to exchange with you on Lilium, which is a very particular aircraft design in the eVTOL space, which is an aircraft that has been shown in flight testing already, and which is lastly a project that has studied in depth for years now already, physically in key entry into service geographies, and confirmed its concept of operations and its initial operations already. To start with the aircraft, and some of you may have seen that we have recently announced the Lilium aircraft to be a 7-seater. This is a design that we have been in certification with EASA and FAA for a few years already. And we consider this to be a very particular, as I was saying, and very efficient aircraft design. It is vector thrust. It is fixed wing. Obviously, it is fully electric. And it comes with the specifications that you see here in terms of a 280 kilometers per hour top cruise speed. And it comes with a leading range of some 250 kilometers. It also comes with, and I thank the previous speakers for having highlighted the relevance of the noise dimension for public acceptance, leading specifications when it comes to the noise output of the aircraft. This is by Munich, Germany, where our flight test campaign is being performed. Some of you may have seen. The aircraft is going up vertically only for a very tiny piece. Before then, the engines that are distributed almost perfectly around the center of gravity of the fuselage on those 4 wings are being tilted seamlessly into a state where then the aircraft is becoming more and more a traditional kind of fixed wing aircraft. Apart from the noise, I would also like to highlight the safety dimensions, and also that was addressed by a few of the speakers so far. That is very, very critical in the end. The distinction with respect to the helicopter that was being highlighted by previous speakers is related to the noise. It is related to the cost, as was being said. But thirdly, I would add, it is also the safety. EASA, with who we are certifying, have actually put out the safety target of 10 to the minus 9, which we support, and against which we are designing the aircraft, so that eVTOL in operations, the Lilium jet in operations, will be, roughly speaking, 100 to 1,000 times safer than a helicopter today is. And only if we reach that safety level, it will, not only from a noise and public acceptance perspective, but also from a safety perspective, be possible to responsibly put a lot of eVTOLs into the air, and specifically also the urban environment. On basis of safety levels as helicopters today are reaching 10 to the minus 6, maximum 10 to the minus 7, it would not be responsible to put dozens or even hundreds of them into a given airspace. How do we make that possible? We make that possible on basis of a team that was being founded by 4 gentlemen, 4 PhD students of aerospace design at Munich University, and by which has now grown, by now has grown to almost 700 employees. Has also been funded internationally by Tier 1 investors, and some of you will have followed the news that Lilium is in the process of currently preparing a SPAC merger. We have been proud to be accepted first in certification with EASA and the FAA, and our objective is to set the highest standards in aerospace engineering, also again with respect to the critical dimensions of safety and noise. The leadership team that are responsible for that to be made a reality is a very experienced one when it comes to aerospace engineering and design. You will potentially have crossed paths with a few of them in the past. Alistair, our Chief Technology Officer, recently joined from Rolls-Royce. Eve, our Chief Program Officer, used to be responsible for quality in the A350 program with Airbus. And we're also thinking ahead already. If you look at Dirk Gebser, for example, who was responsible for manufacturing at Airbus for the whole A320 family, he is currently building already with his team the manufacturing capabilities so that the aircraft will also be built in relevant orders of magnitude so that we can cater for the demand that we are expecting in certain geographies. I alluded to the preparatory work that Lilium have been doing over the past years, and we are very proud to have confirmed with key regulators around the globe on the operational concept, but also the regulatory integration of our operations into the existing aviation world. And the approach that we are taking here is, at least for initial operations, strikingly conservative. Many things we are not. We are not a drone, for example. It is a relatively classic concept of operations and operational strategy, in as much as we will be operated, our aircraft will be operated under traditional AOC, and we will comply with all the standards that are being demanded on basis of an AOC. We will integrate into the airspace traditionally under the same rules of the air and with the same navigation and communication equipment, with a pilot on board, last but not least, who can communicate over voice and integrate just as any other aircraft that would be certified and operated under an AOC. On basis of that, and in conjunction with that, we have explored initial entry into service locations, and over the past few months have actually announced and committed to 3 of them. One of which is the very kind of heart of Europe region of Rhineland, with Cologne and Düsseldorf serving as hubs there, their respective airports, but from where can be connected to Fraport, to the Netherlands, and beyond. We have in the US confirmed partnerships with 2 turnkey landing site vertiport partners that have committed to establish more than 10 vertiports across Florida. And I would like to turn that into a bit of a case study, in as much as if you think of that 2 handful vertiports across Florida and the connectivity potential that they're bringing with them, you will see this is striking. In the end, almost no surface consumption, because the vertiports are being built typically where already buildings exist. Secondly, no, obviously, infrastructure on the ground needed between the destinations. And thirdly, it can be established in a very, very short time frame. Those 2 handful of vertiports are establishing thousands of kilometers, even thousands of miles of high-speed connectivity that is also without any local emissions. There is no alternative of doing that, specifically also if one wants to do it at so low cost, because that in the end comes only at the price of the investment for 10 landing sites. If someone wanted to do that on basis of a high-speed train, of a hyperloop, or interstate system for cars, it would be in the billions, billions of billions. It would be in decades of planning cycles, and it would come with a lot of infrastructure cost over the decades and years to come. Third region that we have confirmed and committed to is our home market around Munich and southern Germany, where Munich Airport, Nuremberg Airport, and other turnkey partners will establish landing sites to connect cities, cities to airports, and also airport to airports, because the short-haul flights, and I assume the same is the case in Korea, are getting under more and more pressure also from an environmental perspective. So I think a lot of players will be happy when we substitute some of the short-haul flights and feed into the also more profitable long-haul flights. Lastly, and to end with, the world is obviously larger than Florida and Germany, than the US and Europe. So against that background, we are obviously open for dialogue on other locations, and we very much appreciate actually the thought leadership that Korea has taken here with the programs that I have already mentioned under the leadership of the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport and also KAC. And we see tremendous potential in Korea, be it in the Seoul area that we understand is the focus of the current government strategy for first steps, but also beyond if we think of the south, if we think of connections to the islands. So with that, I opened by saying it is impressive to see how Korea are leading in technology, but also leading in the application and implementation of technology. With that, I would like to end on a note that obviously it would be a pleasure to also bring the Lilium Jet to Korea one day. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. 네 분의 발표 다 들었고요.
So we have listened to the 4 presentations. As soon as we have arranged the stadium, we will have panel discussions. Speakers, please come up to the stage.
시간이 약간 지체가 되긴
We are a little bit behind the schedule, but we are given 20 minutes. So I'd like to ask some prepared questions, and you can give me the answers or perspective to the question. So the panelists, you can just ask each other and make a comment to the other speakers. So if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
먼저 국토부 나진환
First, my question goes to Mr. Jeungsan-no. So you talked about KUAM roadmap and the Ministry of Land's plan in UAM. Hyundai and Hanwha have started the UAM development in overseas market, and the Korean domestic market has not matured enough to develop the UAM. So what is the government strategy and direction to further enhance the partnership with the Korean companies? It is a very sad story. Up until now, Korean companies' manufacturing capacity in the aircraft area is lagging behind other countries such as US. So unfortunately, Hyundai Motor and Hanwha Systems have approached to US market first. We have to admit the reality, but the Korea's capacity should be enhanced with various government policies. First, we are supporting the certification process in the Korean agency, and I believe that Korean certification-related agency has signed an MOU with Hyundai, and the government is providing support to make that happen as soon as possible. And according to the KUAM roadmap, we are planning to implement the certification and many other infrastructure establishment, including the aircraft manufacturing technology development. If everything goes well as planned, although a little bit belated, I think Korea can compete with other advanced countries in the aerospace industry. Thank you.
Thank you. And next question goes to Mr. Jeungsan-no. Since you released SA1, you talked.
SA1이 선보인 이후에 현대
Many are curious about your UAM development.
오픈하실 수
So
있는
within the scope that can be shared, can you explain the direction and schedule of UAM that you are having domestically and internationally? Thank you for your question. Last January, when we have the CES, we announced the SA1. This is aircraft, and we call it vision concept. Since that concept, we started working on to develop aircraft. Last year and this year, we try hiring the relevant talent to develop, and we secure a lot of talented the resources to develop the aircraft. So when it comes to UAM and UAM aircraft, we are a little bit different from other competitors because we directly develop and we can design it with our philosophies reflected. So that's how we are working currently. And the configuration is a little bit changed from SA1. I cannot reveal a little more, but there will be some changes to the design and configuration. Our goal is 2028, and aircraft that we developed will be commercialized by 2028. That means in 3 to 4 years, we have to have the prototype and set out the test to get the certification. In the market, there are the first generation aircraft will be commercialized very soon. And I think we will join the second generation given the time frame of 2028. So we believe that's when the market will expand more quickly. So the best product fitting the market is the key concern that we are considering. So we are a little bit behind compared to the competitors, but we have a little longer perspective. Please bear that. And at the same time, domestically, we focus on development, and we also review the FCEB aircraft. You know, battery, as you are well aware, is largely about the payload and the cruising distance, so it has clear limitations. To go beyond that limitation, we are now considering hydrogen. If hydrogen is realized, then battery-based and electric propulsion is innovating the UAM market, and the hydrogen will make a bigger innovation. And we have strengths in hydrogen, so if we succeeded in developing hydrogen aircraft, then it will be a real make or break moment. Thank you for your answer.
I want to ask Mr. Kim Seok-kyun of Hanwha Systems development of aircraft and the operation system of Batiu Port have been addressed by you. And Mr. Na from the Ministry of Land is here. So to secure the core technologies in each area, so what is your what do you want to ask? What kind of support do you want to ask from government? As you said, Hanwha System is developing the aircraft and infrastructure as well as a service system. What we are doing is by capitalizing the existing capacities and capabilities and further developing new technologies. We are seeing the UAM as a new ecosystem. So the existing capabilities of Hanwha System is good, but we need to develop new technologies in order to create ecosystem of UAM. So to that end, the government agencies and businesses need to make a kind of consensus about our vision, and the government of land and transport is providing support, and Team Korea is a good initiative. It is not just about the words, they are taking action. However, I think we need to have more dialogue between the stakeholders, so the government agencies can listen to opinions from the business leaders. And I understand the government agency is working hard to reflect the voices of the businesses. But the standardization is important. After the Light brothers have introduced their first aircraft, now we are seeing a new era with the introduction of UAM. So it is a very new area, but I think we can do it. Korea can navigate into this new unknown world by establishing an ecosystem. And for that, we need to have more discussion and have a consensus about the detailed policies. And I think so cooperation is very important. Thank you.
Next question is given to Dr. Tashiro Wenner of Lilium Company. As an aerospace engineer, I'm fascinated with the great creative design of the Lilium, such as canard and aerodynamic design, the distributed electric propulsion system, and the control tilting concepts. Could you show us the current status of the full-size means 5-seater or 7-seater, Lilium flight test plan, and the type certification plan? And please explain your business plan and the cooperation in Korea.
Yes, very happy to do so. As I was mentioning, we have been in certification with actually the 7-seater aircraft for a few years already with EASA and FAA, even before we had communicated the capability of transporting 1 pilot and 6 passengers on that aircraft. So the 5-seater aircraft has never been more than a demonstrator, and it has never been in a certification program, nor ever be planned to be in a certification program. It was always the 7-seater that we have had in mind for years already. So the certification program is proceeding with both entities, and we perceive 2-3 dimensions as kind of the decisive bottlenecks that will, in the end, decide if a eVTOL project will be successful or not. One is a viable aircraft in the end, right? Does it work technically, and also does it, to your question, or the second part of the question with respect to the business case, does it present a platform for a useful and meaningful business case? And we think this is a yes in case of the Lilium aircraft with respect to specifically the range and the payload capacity. So it is, hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, passenger kilometers that can be produced on a single aircraft per hour. The second dimension that will be decisive is the team. And I've mentioned a few more prominent ladies and gentlemen before, but it is also about the broader team in terms of our 700 colleagues, and it is also about the interaction between the team. Is it a team, or is it just an assembly of experienced people with an aerospace background? And that is very robust a task, to be honest, and a lot of management attention has gone into that over the past years, and we are deeply confident that the team is in shape to deliver that aircraft and also in the future to deliver beyond that. And thirdly, lastly, quickly, a decisive dimension of another kind is the financing, is the fundraising. In the end, an aircraft certification and rollout program is significant in its cost. Lilium is in the process of then raising their overall capitalization to around $1.2 billion, and that we are positive is sufficient, also including a buffer, to carry that program through into entry into service without further capitalization. And there is very few entities in the world who can say that about themselves. That's the 3 dimensions. So against that background, bottom line, we are confident to bringing the aircraft into market within the next 3 years in the geographies that I alluded to, US and Europe. Everything beyond that would have to be explored, but I'm very confident when I see this conference, when I see the ecosystem here in Korea, that Korea could be a very, very attractive location for operations beyond our home markets of the US and of Europe.
다 이해가 되셨나요? 이거 동시통역 되고 있나요?
Is it well translated? Well, okay. Throughout the ESR, they are taking very active procedures to get the certificate. We have a lot of lessons to get from their experiences. In the future, we have a lot of the aircraft that need to get the type certificate, and the procedure that the Lilium is taking will be kind of guidance for us to follow.
지금부터는 주어진 시간 동안 시간이 사실은 그렇게 많지가 않은데
During the given time, we do not have enough time, but we will open the floor so you can ask a question to one of the speakers. If you have a question, please.
너무 설명을 잘해 주셨나요?
Did we explain too well?
네.
네, 대한항공 임창근 기자입니다.
I'm the Im Chang-gun, a journalist from Daehan-항공.
설명해 주셔서 굉장히 구체적인 것들을
I was impressed by the presentations. I learned about many detailed things about UAM.
경험에 대해서
The aircraft carrier's perspective, I want to say this.
사에서는
The Airbus created a
A3항공사에서는 B7
A321 and Boeing B787.
큰 비행기로
And Airbus create a giant aircraft moving from hub to hub. It can carry as a great number of passengers, and Boeing focused on the medium-sized passenger crafts,
후속 보내겠다라는 그런 개념을 갖고 있어요.
providing a more wider network of airports, even in a small towns, for passengers, so that passengers can travel around in a very small towns by the Boeing's service. So in the end, the success was given to Boeing,
오시면서 성공할 것이라고 생각했던 A3
and
페이드아웃이 되는
A381 has phased out because they failed. They focused on 2 giant aircrafts. My point is that you mainly talked about UAM. By creating a vertiport, the people can go to the international airport or the Gimpo airport.
강남에서 인천
Let's say people, in order to
도심을 통과해서
move from the downtown to the international airport, which is far away from Seoul,
구청에 있는 작은 착륙장이라도 그런 곳에서 바로 어디든 가고 싶은 데로 가고 싶어 할 거라고 생각했을 때는
but people may think about the mobility from their home to a different locations that they want to go. So can you make your question brief?
과장님께서 말씀해 주셨던
Mr. Na said,
처음에 지도를 보여주면서
you showed me a map
루트를 만들었습니다.
and it shows the route from the Gangnam area to the international airport. But I think better, diverse routes are necessary. Otherwise, passengers may not use that service. If no one uses mobility, even though a great mobility service may be useless because it's inconvenient to use. So what I want to say to Mr. Na is that I think you need to come up with a map that can provide a wider network, diverse routes that the UAM can drive and move and transport people from different locations. So otherwise, you cannot make this project successful by earning money from this new project. And to do that, the government need to think about how to provide the legal support. Mr. Na, do you want to make a response? You are right. What you're saying is correct. The first picture that I have showed you is the first initial route is the downtown area in Seoul to the international airport, and that's the first pilot project. From the government perspective, the demand of the passengers should be considered, and we are working very hard to accommodate the demand from passengers. Mr. Na introduced the phased development project, so I think the phase 3 can provide the on-demand mobility service.
Do you have another question? Please deliver the microphone.
소속을 좀 말씀하시고
Please introduce your affiliation and name. I am Kwon-taeyeon from KIAST.
Jeungsan-no from Lilium. What type of pilot license or piloting skill are you expecting to fly your Lilium jet?
It will be a commercial pilot license, CPL.
네, 그 커머셜 라이센스를 일단은 말씀하신 것 같은데요.
Can you clarify more about the license between fixed wing or rotorcraft?
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. So the CPL has been confirmed with EASA and FAA. How exactly the license will be structured is currently actually under evaluation by those two authorities. It could be based on fixed wing. It could also specifically in Europe also be based on powered lift, which is still existent, has never been used extensively, but it is still an existing category of aircrew training and license. And given that our characteristics in a certain way are relatively similar to that, could also be based on that. Obviously, that can only be a foundation because there is many things that a pilot on a Lilium aircraft would not have to know, that he would have to know on more traditional aircraft. And obviously, there's also elements that he or she would have to be knowledgeable that in the past have not existed. So it has to be amended, but the basis is existent.
Okay, thank you.
네, 시간이 많이 경과해서
So time is ticking, so we have to wrap it up for the next session. So this brings us to the end of the first thematic session of the 2021 Smart Mobility Expo. And we had a very constructive the dialogue between the speakers, and we have Q&A sessions with the participants. Korea is one of the best technologies in the aircraft. If we combine that with the innovative technologies like AI or some smart mobility, if the private sector and public sector and academic circle will join together, then Korea will lead the future mobility, together with advanced countries with a long history. First, thank you all the participants and all the participants who are joining us on and offline. Thank you for being here for quite a long time. This is the end of the first thematic session of the 2021 Seoul Smart Mobility Expo. Thank you.
수고하셨습니다.